This episode of Reasonably Spontaneous Conversation is brought to you in part by Clay Boykin Life and Business Coaching, because we all get stuck at times. For more information, visit clayboykin.com. By Janelli Bean, for fun and engaging children's books with cute and colorful characters. For more information, visit janellibean.com. And by Wise Owl Organizing, simply set up for you. Organizing consulting and clarity coaching, virtual or in person. For more information, visit wiseowlorganizing.com.
Hello world, it's me, Dennis, and I am here on a reasonably spontaneous conversation with my longtime friend, Dan Hogan. Hello, Dan.
Hello, Dennis. Good to see you, buddy.
You and I have gotten a chance to collaborate over the years, and it's wonderful. You today in South Carolina, me in Central Texas, and both of us in the fourth quarter of our lives and in the fourth quarter of our careers, and we are still on the field and we are playing at the top of our game. I'm so grateful for you sending me Right-Minded Teamwork Myth and Reason, Ego, and the Right-Minded Teamwork Myth, because as I read it, it felt like it was not a culmination, but it's almost like this is a menu of all the work that you have been doing, because it has so many of the links to your career of coming into working with teams. That's what it felt like.
And yes, thank you, because that's a validation. That was the intent of this book, because if I may just do a little show and tell.
I was hoping you would.
During the COVID, the rest of the books were created or advanced. So this little guy is introducing the reader to all those other ones. The other ones go into much more detail about some of the tools and so forth that I did use over my 40 years of active facilitation, which I'm not doing now. You mentioned the fourth quarter. I'm not doing any facilitation for hire, although I've done a little bit, but mostly consultation.
And that's where the consultation. So that's what I want to ask you, because in the book that and the work that you're doing, you introduce us to the myth. And so that we're sitting there with reason on one hand and the ego in the other, and the decision maker, me, to see which way I'm going to go, which way am I going to choose. And one of the things that I love about that is because it's digital. It's ones or zeros. We have to make a choice one way, and then it goes gradient. You go gradient into how we're going to do it, but the choice is binary.
That's right. You got it, brother. And it's one or the other, which is another phrase that you and I like about. It comes out of A Course in Miracles. There's no in between. You can't be almost pregnant, if you will. So, and if I may, since you brought that up, let me just show you a quick visual to just say what you just said. We created these characters. There's ego, there's reason, and that's us. So we're either going this way or this way.
Dan, in your consultations, as you're doing now, tell me, in 2022, we're seeing Elon Musk and TikTok. We're seeing how that process is going. We're seeing many businesses that are trying to figure out, how am I going to make teams? Because one thing that I feel absolutely certain of is that the ones who are going to succeed, from a governmental to private to NGOs, are the ones who can cooperate and collaborate the best, because we are an interconnected, interdependent species. We're on this blue marble. That's the only way we're going to succeed. And this is where everything that I see you do is key. So can you talk a little bit about the state of the world and where we're going, and what you're hearing from your clients as you're consulting in that, and where their minds are?
Well, my friend, one of the things I love about you and always have is that you've got this big picture and we're on the blue planet and so forth. And I can go there, but I get so nervous and anxious when I start thinking about changing the world. So for me, the idea of one person at a time, one team at a time, and and I got something actually yesterday that is a way in my mind of answering your question. This is a lady named Vicki Terrell. She's a career management coach in close to where you are, San Angelo, Texas. And this is just like 5 sentences. Let me just read them. Let me do a preface. She purchased and read one of my books called Work Agreements. And if you like, we can go a little further with that. But she wrote, says, "Dear Dan, hi Dan, just conducted your agreements workshop, went great and passed the info along to other coaches I know. Of course, the problem wasn't immediately solved, and I had the opportunity to do coaching individuals one-on-one, but they had a wonderful common language and would follow your decision model to determine how best to handle situations like you were just talking about, Dennis, or implying how to handle situations in the future. Thanks for your materials." This is a person who just took the book, read it, applied it, and it worked.
How does that feel? What does that, I mean, I'm trying to imagine. I mean, when someone sees some of my work or they see something and they take it themselves and expand on it, it's extraordinary. Tell me about you.
Well, thank you. It certainly is gratifying, but it's also justification that the work that you and I do and Vicki does, it's not only helping us, but it's helping them. And so in my mind, and I think you used the word collaboration a moment ago, if it's good for me, it's good for everybody else, generally speaking. And that's the reason why we have this phrase. I think you and I spoke about it: do
Yep.
no harm and work as one. And so if we're being kind and gentle and consistent and being collaborative, looking for solutions versus blame, we can make things better. But if you're following the ego, you're doing the opposite. So there comes back to what you were saying a moment ago. It's one or the other.
Yeah. And so we look at the world and say, okay, there in our two worldviews, there is either the zero-sum game, whereas if you gain anything, it must come out of my pie. So therefore, I have to be afraid. I have to be concerned about you and always watching you. Or what you're talking about and everything that you write about and teach is that the world is synergistic. The pie gets bigger as we continue to communicate and collaborate. There is more for everyone, and there is enough.
Yes, and Dennis, in one of the other books around choice, or what I call right-minded choice, the idea of scarcity versus abundance. It's the same concept. If I'm approaching my teamwork or my teammates or my team leader, and I'm thinking there's just so much, I've got to work for everything I get, that's an attitude that results into behavior. So that's going to mean that I'm not being collaborative, etc. But if I say, yes, this pie looks this big, we've only got this about a budget, we've only got these particular customers, how can we grow our abundance? Then answers can come, but they won't come if you're stuck in scarcity.
Yes. And that's one of the things, Dan, is that if we can then go ahead and say, one of the things that I love about you, and her name was Valerie, was it?
Yeah, Vicki. Yes.
What Vicki said was, it's not easy. It didn't happen the first time. And what I love about your work is that it is not let me say what it is rather than what it's not. It helps us to say is that every time we come to a place, we get to make a new decision.
Yes.
We decide one way or the other. So it isn't, you're telling me that there is an answer. We can trust what we have. Sit down. Let's make that answer. How can we move toward, is this going to be do no harm, work as one? Are we moving in that direction? If we're moving in that direction, we're going to be able to do it. And if we have the facilitators. So at this level, you're touching the people who are teaching your work, right? That's
Yes,
the people that you most want to consult with.
currently right now. And yes, because I don't want to go do that hard work anymore. Or it's wonderful work and it's hard work. But the Vickies of the world I want to chat with. But I want to underscore what you just said by telling you a quick real story.
Would you?
The idea of creating work agreements, okay, and they're maybe not perfect at first, but if you keep living them, they will pay off. In my several of my books, I give a lot of real world examples. Here is one of them, and I've written about it extensively on my website if people want to take a shot at it. And it's free blog materials.
Mm-hmm.
But this one team that I was assigned to work with, I actually stayed with them for 2 years. But the first meeting that we got together, they did a perception survey, and there was low trust among themselves, very low. They created work agreements. I met with them 3 months later. It started to improve because they did the same survey again. You could see some trend lines going up. 3 months later, now 6 months in, trend lines going up. After 1 year, they're on looking in the mirror, if you will, to evaluate how much they trust each other. It improved 78% in 1 year. Now, that means, in my mind, and you didn't use the word, but this is not a magic bullet, not a pill. You're going to wake up and trust each other. But this group of 9 people did, and they stuck with it, and they were very successful. Not only trusting, but that first year they brought in a savings to their organization of $350,000, just because they were looking for solutions. And that didn't occur to me just right now. That's growing the pie, isn't it?
And that is growing the pie, and that's what I love about. I mean, you have a return on investment, and what is so neat about this is that you have touched every node in the business cycle, because you touch it from okay, how are we going to plan? How are we going to get there? How are we going to work through getting 100% toward 100% customer satisfaction? Plus, how are we going to deal with this when we're talking to the investors, the stockholders? Because here's our return on investment and what we're doing. So you have really worked in the development. Have you seen the maturity in your work and how you have understood this over time as you have worked in this area?
You know, it's a great question. I would say yes, but I have to borrow from another part of my materials. I'm going to grab another little show and tell thing.
Love it.
There is this model that's been around for about 25 years or so. And what this says is, and by the way, there's the decision maker. So when a difficult situation happens, you can either go down here with the ego and blame and attack, or you can go up here with reason and find solutions. If you were on my website and you were looking at this material, you would see people who have said, I've used this model for 20 or 25 years, et cetera, et cetera. So I used to, I did the same thing with the little cards. There's the little model and a little card. You can download those from the website. And some of the people say they stick them on their filing cabinet, or take them put them in their wallet or something like that. So the answer is yes, I've seen some longitudinal evidence of many people saying this was really helpful in helping me get out of a bad situation or transforming a difficult team situation.
Wonderful. And what is driving you today, Dan? What are the things, because this is so much of you offer, so of course you offer books and you offer facilitation and what you're doing, but so much of your stuff you offer to people. You say, please take it, learn from it, use it, develop it. Please have this. This is it's an extraordinary openness that I'm seeing that you're doing to offer this to the world.
Well, thank you. There's there's two plays on one concept, and Dennis, I know you know this. There's the little capital, there's the capital S self, and there's the lowercase self, right? So there's the capital self in our language of work, do no harm and work as one.
Yes.
The capital S self is looking for that abundance in everything. Okay. The lower S self is not, right? So in order to keep, if you will, the higher S self in my daily life, you got to give it away. So, I mean, if
It's
you
the only
have
way. Have we ever
an
seen?
idea, if you have an idea and you share it and it grows, then you're actually increasing your value,
Absolutely.
your knowledge, and also others are doing it as well. And I'm hoping, I've never spoken to Vicki, but my hope would be in the next week or so I can chat with her personally to find out more about what's going on, because just sitting with her and sharing with her about her first time experience doing this, I bet I can give her a couple of extra things to do to help her out, as well as I'm sure she can teach me. But we're growing in abundance.
One of the things I want to go back to something that you said earlier, because as one of the core, because if I go into any business and I say to a team or to a group, if I just said one thing to them, how would you benefit? Would you feel it was a benefit if there were greater trust in your organization, on your team, within your people, within themselves? How would you feel about that if the trust increased in that particular unit? What would you do? And I've never heard, as I've done my own communication coaching from my end, the way I've done it, and applied some principles. I mean, it's like you are Newton, and you have written down your Principia and all that, and you have that, but that doesn't mean that you invented math. I have been applying some of these principles and will apply them even more. So,
yes, sir.
In developing the trust and in seeing trust, and I've talked to leaders all over the world, I've never heard of a one that said yes. That said, no, well, I think we need less trust in the organization. I think that would help us get our bottom line if the trust. I mean, we see this right now with Twitter, right? You could do nothing. Elon Musk could do nothing more to destroy the trust within that organization than is happening now that we can see from the outside. It's almost the you know how you see the anti. This is
it's sad,
isn't it? Yeah. I can't see, because that's what I want. What I want to do is, and I'm not here. I don't want to no, I am criticizing Elon Musk, so I am judging him, and so that's what. All right, so now that all right, Elon,
now that you've admitted it.
Yes, I am. But what I'm saying is that what can I learn? What can I learn about? Because what I've found, Dan, is that there is no time when I am judging someone outside of myself, especially if I judge them in their behavior, that I'm not actually judging me. There's something inside of me that I'm holding on to. There's some place that I'm trying to micromanage and control and develop, that I'm doing, because it's really so much about me.
Yes, yes. And to collaborate and bounce back with that, if I'm judging, well, let me grab my model real quick.
Please.
If I'm judging, I'm down here rejecting, attacking, avoiding. And guess what I'm not doing? I'm not accepting and forgiving myself and others for making this team mistake. It's really quite simple, isn't it?
Yes. I mean, that's one of the things that I love. That's one of the things that I love about understand, is that it's simple, but it's not easy. But it requires me to come back over and over, moment by moment, and say, let me choose again.
Right. Let me choose again. And what you're going to see, if some of the people watching this or will start looking at my books, you're going to see a phrase that I use that we use called moment of reason.
Talk more about it.
You've got to have a moment of reason. It's like, come back to your own center. Stop attacking. Stop judging. A moment of reason is some clarity. A lot of times it's intuition. Let me do a little tangent there. Everyone that is watching this, I know you, Dennis, are the same thing. You've had an intuition to say something, to do something, etc., and you didn't do it. What did you say after you realized you didn't do it? I wish I had
followed my intuition.
Right. I wish I'd followed my intuition. That is the good moment of reason versus the opposite of listening to the ego for a moment of attack. So yes, we all need that moment of reason, or that moment where we're saying, if I'm judging here, I'm not finding solutions. I just need to rise above this battleground, if you will, and find solutions and help find solutions. I should say that there also is a link to something else that you were talking about now. Do no harm, work at one. That's one part of the right-minded teamwork motto. The other part of it is none of us is as smart as all of us.
Mm.
So if I'm judging, I'm not tapping into that reservoir of knowledge, that diversity of my team. So
no, when I'm judging, I'm separating myself from the rest of the team and saying that I am in a different state, and that's not going to be helpful for me or anybody else on this journey.
And since you mentioned separation, if your listeners and viewers are watching this, you briefly mentioned the myth. In that book, there's a very short little story that talks about how we were all collectively one, but one time the tiny mad idea came into the head is, what if I could have more than everything? And that was the birth of separation. And then ego created more tribes, and more tribes begin to come together and then split off. And we've got a world where we're splitting and joining and splitting off all the time. And all that is separation.
It is that, and it helps me to understand, because one thing that has been really in my mind, continues to niggle at it, is that what is enough? Because when we look at how many billionaires there are, or how many 100 millionaires there are, the question I think it's a logical question, but I don't hear it articulated, is, have you set a number that this is enough? Once I get this place, does that exist? Is there something that says enough? Well, of course, the ego is going to say no. It could, just like in your it could never be enough. That's a ridiculous question. It makes no sense to the ego.
That's right. And in the myth story we talk about, it says the ego was struggling to find a place to store all their stuff and lock it up so people wouldn't steal it from them. So why spend all that energy getting more stuff and locking it up?
And so it's a question of, what does it make you? Why are we here? When we get to purpose, and that's what I love about all of your work, is so purpose driven, because it always gets back to what are we doing here? Are we here to really to succeed, to be able to have peace, to be able to have joy? Because one of the things I find fascinating whenever I see a service animal, and I invite anyone to try this, take a look at the eyes of a service animal. Sir, there is something going on, because there's a purpose. There's one thing there's a purpose that is going on there. And I believe that human beings are purpose-driven beings. We're animals. And when I have purpose, suddenly everything begins to work. I'm collaborating, but when I lose that purpose, when it's only just for me,
it bombs.
It bombs totally. All right, and All right, so tell me about the the collaboration. What it feels like to me, Dan, is that what's going on in the next years, that your work is going to be uh more needed. More people are going. What are you hearing from the people that you're doing the consulting with? What are you hearing? What are they saying to you that are you getting some general themes about what you're doing as you're doing this at this level of consultation?
Well, the answer is yes, and that we need to work as one. And I've actually heard that consistently in my 40-year career. But let me share something that I just heard of and witnessed about 3 weeks ago or so. I a former colleague reached out to me and asked, can you help us present this organizational analysis to this organization? And I'll refrain to share who they are, but they help low-income cancer patients just get to the doctor. They pay their medical bills, their travel bills, et cetera. It's just a lovely mission-driven organization, but they're not working well together, but they have such wonderful results. So we presented the results of our analysis, and we helped them create some strategic goals for 2023. The chairman of the board, as well as the founder, and you mentioned rich people, who happens to be a billionaire, said this was, in their 16-year history, the best board retreat that they've ever had. And that just happened about 3 weeks ago. So it's not new. What you do and what I do is not new. And you said that a moment ago, but it's just, we gotta just touch people wherever we're led and do what we should do wherever we are and be satisfied and happy with it, whether or not we get, if you will, credit for it, or whether or not we get accolades for it. Is just do it because it's about our healing as well as theirs.
Exactly. And that's one of the things that I love about it, is that if I have because I've studied quantum physics from a level, from a non-academic level. Okay. And what I love about the idea of entanglement, which is when one thing changes here, the other thing changes, is that if I can heal something inside of me, something is being healed in the world. It's part of the process. There's an entanglement that I can actually be. Now, I may not be able to see it at that instant. I may not be able to recognize it, but it's happening.
Yes.
And that's what I see you doing as you're continuing with right-minded teamwork and all of the consultations that you're doing, is that you're bringing about light. Again, when I look at when I look at that decision, that binary decision, and I look at the continuum, I feel like that we're moving from 0 to 1 on the continuum. 1 being at 1 month, which is your wholeness, your full light integration, and we're moving little steps. And this is where your work takes us 1 step, and having the patience to move 1 step at a time back toward the light. When we move back 1 step away, we move back toward the light.
Right.
That's wonderful, Dan.
Thank you.
Thank you for letting me. I know I have been gushing at you because I've needed to say this, because the work that you're doing is so important.
Wow.
It's so foundational to a world that is healing, that is getting an opportunity to truly to see what we can do. And you've laid all the work out that it's going to be able, that people are going to be able to follow and continue in this work.
Well,
I'm
thank you. And
very
let me
proud
please,
to know you.
well, as well, Dennis, and please know for sure what the work that I've done could not succeed unless they were doing work with like you are doing and like you have been doing. So thank you for inviting me to have this spontaneous conversation. It's truly what that was, because folks, I had no idea what he was going to ask me.
Thank you, my dear friend Dan Hogan, and thank you, everybody. You know the website. It will be on here on the links. You'll have the book Connect with all the material and what we're doing. You will see this as a life-changing and team-changing moment if you do. So get over there. Get off of this, get over there. Yeah. Dan Hogan, thank you so much. A big hug to you, my dear, my dear friend. And
thank you.
And bye, everyone, and we will see you next time.
This episode of Reasonably Spontaneous Conversations has been brought to you in part by In Search of the New Compassionate Male. For more information, go to newcompassionatemale.com.